Greetings, students, and welcome to this special episode of The Professor Travel. I am your host, The Professor Travel, coming to you from Orange County, California. This is the website, the vlog, and the podcast that you come to in order to learn more about different travel destinations. Hopefully, this will spark discussion and have you talk a little bit more about those places. We hope this inspires you to travel more and enjoy life more. Now, you can reach me on a variety of different locations, including my website at theprofessortravel.com. I'm also available on both Facebook and on YouTube at The Professor Travel. I am now available on TikTok at The Professor Travel. You can also find me through Instagram. It's a little bit different there. You want to find me at _professor_travel. On Twitter, I'm available at TheProfessorTR1. And then if you're a blogger, you can find me on Blogspot at theprofessortravel.blogspot.com. Today, I am extremely excited to have a very special guest today. Mark Wolters is joining us from Wolters World. Say hi, Mark.
Hey there, Scott. How you doing?
I am fantastic. I am a huge fan of you and your channel, so thank you so
Thanks,
much for
man.
joining me. No, please, thank you. So for the benefit of my students, can you just talk to us a little bit about your credentials, maybe a little bit about your educational background and some places that you've enjoyed traveling to?
So we run a travel channel on YouTube. We've got about almost 700,000 subscribers, 155 million views. We travel as a family all around the world. We've been doing it for about 10 years, or no, 11 years now on YouTube. It's been a long time. I don't know. We really focus on honest travel advice. So we will do what we can to help people be prepared for when they travel. So it's not a bad shock or a bad thing that happens to you. Because if you're prepared when you travel, the bad stuff's not bad stuff. It's like, I knew that was going to happen. So you can actually make like what would be a bad experience into a, I know the culture kind of experience. So we really try to help people out and just help them travel better, help people travel on their own so they feel more confident travel on their own, whether they're, retirees, or if it's people want to take their kids for the first time, or just middle-aged guys with beards, like ourselves. So we feel comfortable traveling, and so that's what we really try to do. And so we really try to reach out to all types of travelers any way we can to help them out.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much on that. Also, just so people know, you are actually a professor like myself.
Yes. I'm a teaching associate professor at the University of Illinois. I teach marketing there. And that's why it was funny, because for those of you that are watching or listening to the podcast, you don't realize there's actually some slides up here, and it's like visiting professor. I'm like, oh, that's my old title. That's been years ago. So we had a fun time chatting about the funs of being professors. But yeah, so I've been teaching at the U of I for 9 years, and I've been teaching since about 2002. Yeah, since 2002.
Excellent.
So it's been a fun ride. So it's fun because I will actually take students, well, not this year, but every year I usually take a group of students to usually Europe, and we'll do classes abroad. So it's a nice way to get students, because not every student can do a semester abroad or something like that. So I can take it for 10 days or a month just so they get some kind of international experience. So it's a fun thing.
Excellent. So during this specific podcast and vlog, I want to focus on a few things. I want to talk to you a little bit more so that my students are aware of what Wolters World is, how many countries you've been to, what types of content that you guys have on your site, because obviously it drives a lot of traffic. As I said, I'm a huge fan. You've got a lot of really great travel tips on there.
Thanks, man.
So let's talk a little bit about what it is that you do. Yours is one of the few sites I've seen where I see, because I'll see couples travel and stuff like that, but I actually see you and your family travel. So talk to me a little bit about what the focus was on when you originally created Wolters World and what you wanted to do with that.
So when I really first started doing this, there's a few things that happened. One, I was actually started making language videos and cultures videos on Lisbon, Portugal. So I was doing my PhD there, and my wife now, and she was, we were engaged, and she was going to move into Portugal. So I started making videos to help her like get ready to go. So it's like, I'll teach you some of the basic food vocabulary of in Portuguese at the place you're going to go shopping when you're here and stuff. And so I started doing that. I started making videos for like business videos for my students in Portugal, because not everyone was a native speaker. So then the students can go back and watch it at a slower space, that can help them out. But really got me going was I was staying in Veneto, near Venice, for about a month one year. And I got a guidebook. I didn't have a guidebook for Veneto, the Veneto region. I was like, I'll pick one at the airport. We'll be fine. I pick up a guidebook. First city listed in there. It wasn't Venice. It wasn't like Padua or Verona. It was like this other town. And it wasn't alphabetical order either. So I'm like, it must be important. It's the first one you're going to talk to. And I read the guidebook. Like, dude, this place sounds awesome. Like the palazzo, the museum, the food. I'm like so pumped. And I show my Italian friends there, and they're like, that town? Really? I've never gone there. I'm like, that should be a sign. When none of your friends that live within an hour of a place have ever gone there, that's a sign, okay? And so I go there, and I'm like all excited to go because I'm like, oh yeah, that'd be cool to see a new place. So I go. The palace is closed. The museum is worthless. The food isn't really that good. The square is all like a parking lot. I'm like, what? And I was so disappointed. And I was just like, I wasted a day of like my trip. But I was like, it's okay. And it really got me thinking because I was doing my PhD at the time, so it was between semesters. So I actually had some free time. Like you remember those days when you had free time before,
Yeah, welcome. Exactly.
But I thought about it because I was like in my late 20s at the time. And I was thinking of my friends back in the US that maybe had 10 days of vacation a year. I'm like, think about it. You got a 10-day vacation a year, maybe the only time you get to go in your life, or once every 10 years, you might get a great trip like this. And you just wasted 10% of your vacation on some crappy town because a guidebook basically lied to you or overinflated it. And I'm like, that's not right. And so we started making these videos, 5 things you'll love and hate about going to places so you could be better prepared. Because I mean, if you look at blogs and you look at vlogs and stuff like that, they're always, I mean, I'm a very positive person, but I'm going to be honest with you. But some of them go over the top. Like there's some like, this is our favorite city in Mexico. I'm like, you said that 5 times in 5 different cities, and I got really tired of like the sponsored posts and stuff. Yeah, because I mean, I can understand bloggers and vloggers say, look, they're getting a free trip to Memphis, or they're getting a free trip to Georgia or something like that. Like, yeah, of course they're going to say some nice things, but then they kind of eliminate the bad stuff. Not that they're, I don't know, not giving people the heads up, but they're just kind of selectively talking about things. And I'm like, that's not right. I didn't feel ethically right not saying the good and the bad to get people prepared, because I've seen a lot of people that some little thing will ruin their vacation. Like, oh, I had to pay for the bread. I can't believe that. Like people will get pissed because they had to pay the bread someplace. Like in Portugal, I would see so many upset tourists because you have to pay for the bread and the butter and the olives, all the stuff you think is free in the US or other places. No, in Portugal, you have to pay for that. And it's on the menu, but it's like small print. You don't really realize it.
I remember your video on this, by the way, because it
Yeah.
surprised me because I had never known that if somebody puts something at your table, automatically I'm thinking, oh, well, that's just complimentary. And then
Yeah.
you're like, oh, no, wait, if you eat it, then you have to pay for it.
Yeah,
So,
and so like I lived in Lisbon for 5 years, and so I mean I would go out to eat, and I'd be like, hey dude, just FYI, and people get pissed because they're like, I have to like, it would be like a €6 meal, but their bill would be like 20 because they ate the bread, the cheese, the ham, all this stuff. And so I'm like, look, let's let people know. And so once we let people know, it really changed their perspective from like, oh, making me pay for bread made demand to like, oh, hey, if we're not going to eat that bread, just tell them to take it back. And then all of a sudden, it really changed people's perspective. And one thing I always want to do is be positive. So even if we talk about negatives and bad things or trouble spots, we're going to be positive about it. It's not like this is the worst thing ever. It's like, look, you might want to be, heads up for this. So we really that really focused me at the beginning of what we really want to do. And I'm just so passionate about traveling and going. And like, I love traveling. Like being stuck at home for 6 months now.
yeah, this has been crazy.
Like, it is. Oh my God. Like,
well, I mean, like for me, like my mother was a travel consultant, and so that's what
yeah.
got me into traveling at an very, very early age.
Yeah.
Why are you so passionate about travel?
I don't know, because my entire childhood, we only went from Illinois to Ohio for vacation. Like that's it.
Maybe that's the reason why, is because you're
It
just
could
trying to
be.
get out now about
It
everything.
could be. No, I know, like when I was little, before my grandpa passed away, he had retired from being a minister, and so he would be like a part-time minister. So like, oh, we need you in California for 3 weeks, or we need you in New York for 6 months. So he'd do that. So he'd always send us postcards from all over the U.S., and I thought that was kind of cool. I'm really sad we never saved them, because my mom would read them okay and they'd throw them away. Now I actually have I have my parents and my aunt, my grandma's passed away. Hey, I send you postcards. If you don't want to keep them, just give them back to me. And I have a huge box like this big
Oh,
of
that's awesome.
postcards for the last 30 years, no, 20 years, 25 years of travel. So I have those, but as part of me think maybe there's some of that in there. But I do remember the first time I started to study, I studied abroad. I was talking to this girl from South Africa, and she was an exchange student at the U.S. And she's like, you should try to study abroad. I think you'd like it. I'm like, I don't know. She's like, look, there's summer programs. Just try a summer one, see if you like it. Ended up doing a summer program, loved it, signed up, did another year in high school. Then I went to college and did a summer one, a semester one. Then I did my master's abroad, my PhD abroad, worked abroad. I was like, it just kind of like, it was like a drug. I'm like, I gotta go. It's the most expensive habit you can have is travel. It's crazy, but
No,
it got me really passionate about it.
but it's one of those things that I think once you get the travel bug, you really find a way to, satiate that as quickly as
Yeah,
possible. So
yeah.
let's. Oh, I'm
Sorry.
sorry. Go ahead. No,
No,
please go ahead.
no, I'm just saying, like, and that's the thing. It's like once you figure out the thing that you're really passionate about, like for me, making the travel videos and stuff like that's not work. That's like I want to help people. I want to go out there and do these things. I want to share my experiences. So like other people don't make the mistakes, or other people can enjoy. Because the thing is there are some places that a lot of people really love, but there's other places like, oh, I never thought about that. Like people are like,
Hmm.
I never thought I'd go to Nicaragua. You know what? Granada, Nicaragua is awesome. Check it out. Oh, I never considered that. And then if we can open up some people's minds to some new destinations and new places, and just maybe new cultures, even if they can't travel there to learn more, I think it's kind of a cool thing.
Well, and that's one of the things I think is wonderful about your channel specifically is that I've gotten a lot of prep work done ahead of time by being
Yeah.
able to just watch that. And I think that's one thing that a lot of my students can benefit from is seeing, specifically your do's and don'ts videos, and the top 5 things. I love those videos. I've always loved those videos. It's really given me kind of like a like a backdoor view of what to do or what to expect when you're going into a country. And so I
Yeah.
think that's golden. It's absolutely
Yeah.
fantastic.
And that's what I want to do is because my whole thing is I'm not a travel agent. I'm not a travel consultant like your mom. I'm putting the information out there so you can make your own choices. So we did like our stuff's really much a background. You're gonna go travel, you watch our videos before you go so you're ready. It's not like you live travel through us necessarily. It's more like, hey, you want to go to this place? You should find out. I mean, that's what's funny is I've seen like with COVID, I can really see like when people it was February 14th is when people started to stop really thinking about travel. We saw the numbers just crater
Yeah.
because they're like, wait, I'm not going to travel, so I'm not going to prepare for travel. And so it's been down since. And like through like May, that remember when we were all getting excited towards Memorial Day, like, hey, things are starting to get a little better. Maybe we can travel. I actually could see it like, oh, people are starting to prepare for travel again. And then once the pop happened again in
Hmm.
June, boom, it went back down. I'm like, people are not preparing for traveling anymore, and it's kind of interesting to see.
Let me ask you a question on that same note. Do you think that people, just based on what you're viewing from your viewership, are people gravitating more towards domestic travel? Because I mean, people do want to get out of the house.
Yeah, our I would say our top like 30 videos, usually our top 30 videos, maybe 20 of them are European videos. Now of our top 30 videos, the top 20 of them are US videos.
Yeah.
So it's like it's switched. Like it's become very much a domestic kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's talk about Walter's World. When did you decide to create this? Why did you decide to create this? I mean, obviously, it sounds like you wanted to help people, but I wanted to
Yeah,
understand, like, you've been doing this for a long time. I've been watching your videos for many years now, actually, and I really enjoy them.
thank
What
you.
was the catalyst for wanting to do this in the first
Well,
place?
really, it was like what I was talking about that guidebook in Italy just really upset me, and I'm like, and then I started seeing more blogs, people that was obviously just it's like the old days of guidebooks where they would copy off each other. You could tell people
Yeah.
making mistakes. Like, I was like, I had a go-to thing. I would look up in guidebooks for certain stuff. Like in Brazil, if you go from Ouro Preto to Mariana, it's like there's a train that goes between the two. Really cute train, really nice experience. And the train's like hour and a half to get there, somewhere around there. And I'd always look right away and say, what do they say about that? Like, oh, it's an easy half-hour train ride. I'm like, BS. You did not take that because you get on the train. It says, welcome to this hour and 20 minutes. Like it literally says that's how long it is.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
can see it was probably like somebody saw it's an hour and a half, an hour and 30 minutes. And they misread it and it was 30 minutes. We all do that. We all misread things sometimes. And that's what I'm like, oh, come on. Like it's all freshly reviewed and redone. I don't know. And
Mm,
so that's what got me. I'm like, look, I want to do what I can to help out because I know there's people out there that they're getting this material like they're taking it as it's the Bible. Like this is how things are. I'm like, look, I'm going to give you the information that I have from my experiences. I'm not going to say it's exactly that way, but I want to help you have a better understanding. So when you go, you can be safe when you're traveling. You can get more out of your travels. So that's what really drove me to do these things. And over the years, that's where it's kind of driven our types of videos we made. So we started with the big ones when we first started getting like stuff was the 5 love and hates videos, like
mhm.
5 things you love and hate about going to places. And then people will get upset, oh, hate's such a bad word. I'm like, yeah, but nobody watches 5 things you'll love and 5 things that will mildly annoy you. It's like, and we were always very positive about it. And we get a lot of comments from people like, I was coming to this to be mad, and then you're very honest, and you're very, objective about this, and we really appreciate it. I'm like, hey, no problem. Um, but it started with that, and from there it kind of evolved, because then it was like, okay, those are more serious kind of things, and then it's like the 10 shocks videos were like fun culture shock stuff. It's kind of like, and then over time it's like, look, we need to be more serious. That's where the don'ts came in, and now we have a new series on travel mistakes. Like, well, I have a bunch of them filmed, but I mean, nobody's traveling right now, so I don't want people to miss out. So when people start traveling, we start having them coming out again.
I
And
definitely want to see those.
and the mistake one, because if you look at it, like I tell people, look, if you're going to go, watch the don'ts videos. Okay,
Yeah.
do the don'ts videos. That's, if you're only going to watch one, do that, because it's the do's and don'ts. And so you're going to be, it's about safety, it's about sites, it's about culture stuff. So you're going to be okay. If you want to learn, if you want to have some fun, like have some fun jokey stuff, go to the shocks. If you're ready to go, you've been to a place before, you just want to like know the little bit of things, like, oh, that's like a little more. That's where the mistakes are.
Yeah.
For the mistakes of traveling, kind of doing it that way. And so that's why some people are like, wait, aren't they all going to be the same? No, you'll be surprised, because some of the mistakes you make are not necessarily a don't. Like, some, it's a good mistake to make. It's like, you know what? Make the mistake when you speak French, because you're trying, and the people will freaking love you for that.
Yeah, exactly. Let's shift gears a little bit. I'm curious
Yeah.
about your specific and your family's travels. So
Yeah.
how many continents have you been to?
So well, it depends where you're from, because some people count continents differently.
Hmm.
So we've we'll just this. I've been to all the continents except for Antarctica, and we're gonna do that when my youngest one is old enough to go.
Okay,
So we're gonna
perfect.
do that.
And
Yeah.
and how many countries have you been to, do you think? I know that's a
So
huge ask.
Well, the thing is I know I'm like at 70, somewhere around there, but I actually, for me, I was like, look, I'm old. I don't care. I'm like,
Oh
I want,
God,
because
whatever.
we go back. Like, for me, I'm like, look, I don't want to just count the things. I want to go back. Like, we go back to the same place in Italy a lot of times to see friends.
Yeah.
But where I like to count more is the kids. I'm like, look, so my oldest, he's 13. He's
Hmm.
been to 50 countries, and my youngest, he's 9, and he's been to 45. And so, like, for me, it's more like, I'm like, I think that's cool for them. Like, and so we kind of focus. I focus more on those for their things. But I know some people, like, it's totally cool to kind of, if that's what you want to do it, get them. But now it's funny, because now the last few years I've really focused our travels on, like, where can I go see friends? Like, our 2017 trip, it was, we flew into Sweden, because we saw our buddy Sebastian. Then we went to Finland, because I used to live there, so we saw my old host family there. We went to Russia, because we hadn't been, but I had friends in
Hmm.
St. Petersburg. Then
Oh,
we're in
lovely.
Tallinn, because I used to work in Tallinn, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. I lived in Lithuania for 3.5 years, so we visited friends throughout those places. And then we flew to Scotland, because that's where our family's from. Like, my family's from, so we want to go there. Saw that. Then we went to Spain to see my best friend that we did my master's with in Germany. And then from Spain we went to Greece, where Jocelyn's family's from. And so we really, like, now it's like folks, like, who we're going to see. So, like, this summer we kind of mixed it up, because we had friends we were going to visit, we had a wedding to go to, but then we were going to throw some new places in. Like, we were going to get to Israel and Ethiopia. Those got canceled because of that COVID
Thing,
thing.
whatever. I've heard
Yeah,
about. Yeah.
that pandemic. You maybe heard it. It's on the news occasionally. I think it's
Yeah.
on
So
page
long ago.
3 of the newspapers.
Yeah. So long.
Yeah. So there's that. So it was funny, because our original plan for this year was try to get to 20 countries. Now, not
Mm.
20, maybe not 20 new countries, but 20 countries to explore around. And we've got to 2, I guess. If you count the U.S., we got to 2, because we went to
Well,
El Salvador. And
yeah.
so,
I
but
have I have a
it is
question
what it
for
is.
you, because
Yeah.
when I was one of the first places I went, like one of the first travel destinations I went to when I was younger. I was 11 years old. I went to Alaska on a cruise.
That's cool.
Yeah, so made a stop in
Your parents are way
Canada.
nicer than mine.
I'll stop, whatever. So we did that, and I will say this: at the age of 11, I don't think I appreciated it as much. But now that I look back at the older pictures, I'm 47 years old. I'm looking back at the
Young.
pictures. Oh,
47 years young.
47 young, sorry, 47 years young. And I'm looking back at the pictures, and I'm like remembering my father, and my mom is like, oh my gosh, I remember that picture. I love that. And so I'm wondering, have you actually had the sit down with your kids, especially your 13-year-old, to say, hey, you've gone to so many different countries. Is this something that's really enjoyable for you? Are there places you'd like to go differently? What are your thoughts? Like, has he had a conversation with you about, like, what his likes are and what he doesn't like about
Yeah.
traveling?
So every year we let the boys choose a destination.
Okay.
And so we've been doing that since, I think, 2014.
Okay.
Let in, or no, 15, it was 15 when we started because we let our fans choose one trip, well, at least one trip a year, and then the boys get to choose a trip we do.
Hmm.
And so like Liam has chose Mexico, Caleb chose Costa Rica, Iceland, Japan. Israel was a choice from Liam. I also wanted to go. That's one of the places I wanted to go. I haven't been to yet. So I'm like, sure, you want to go? I'm cool with that,
Are you
And
sure
so,
you want to do that? Oh, no
yeah, so
problem.
twist my arm. I was an exchange student in Australia in high school, and my oldest, who doesn't like flying very much, he's like, I want to go to Australia. I'm like, okay. So
Hmm.
it's like we could
It's
do
a
that.
long flight.
It was a long, long flight. That was my first international flight was from LAX to Sydney,
Yeah.
middle seat. So
And you're not a tiny guy, with
no,
respect,
I
of
mean,
course.
I was in high school then, so I wasn't
Oh, okay. So then,
husky, so it wasn't too bad.
okay.
So, but yeah, no one would want to sit by me on a 15-hour flight now. That's almost like I'd take the aisle, lay my fat rolls over on the
Oh,
sides within
stop.
the aisle. I'm like, there you go. So
So let me ask you this: views of countries with political and civil unrest. As I made
yeah,
mention to you before we started recording, I was in Barcelona, actually on that funny, not funny, but on the same trip. We had gone to London and then jumped over to Amsterdam, down to Roman Vatican City, and then over to Barcelona.
it's making me
When
cry. I want to go on that
I
too.
saw that, but while we were over in London, there was what was perceived as a terrorist bombing in the tube. And so we thought, oh my gosh, they're going to lock down the entire place. And, we took a taxi, and, the guy's like, oh, stuff like this happens from time to time. It's not that big of a deal. And it turns out it wasn't a terrorist attack as well. It was domestic terrorists. It was
Right.
the kid who blew a pipe bomb in the area. But I mean, stuff like this will happen. And so this talks about risk management and risk and rewards and things like that. What are your views on going to different countries that have those political and civil unrest situations?
Well, I always say is do your own research because it's kind of like we go to Brazil quite often, and you only hear horrible news about Brazil. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna get shot when you walk off the plane. Remember Zika was gonna kill everybody.
Hmm.
That was gonna get you. I mean,
You get
it's
stuff
like all this
stolen
stuff.
at gunpoint, and
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it does happen to some people. I'm not
Mhm.
going to say it doesn't happen, but I lived in Brazil for over half a year. I've taken my family to Brazil multiple times. I've had one umbrella stolen, and I think it's because I was drunk and I just left it behind.
Okay.
That's it. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, but there are issues. But the thing is, I'll look and say, it's like, look, Rio's got issues. So we go to Minas Gerais. We'll go to Sao Paulo. We'll go down to Santa Catarina. We'll go to different places, and we do our research. For example, we went to Nicaragua. Love Nicaragua. Totally. Jocelyn wants to retire there. My wife.
Nice.
And we had a great time going to these Letas little islands in Lake Nicaragua. Granada, Nicaragua was fantastic. But we knew you don't go to Managua. You stay out of Managua. It's like going to Belize. You don't go to Belize City. You go to Kikoka or San Pedro, or you go inland, and you go by the see the Mayan ruins, but you don't stay in Belize City. It's just it's like anywhere. There's places you don't go. You do your research beforehand. But there are certain things where I really will put like my foot down. Like if it's a war zone, we're not going there, right? And I won't fly over war zones either. I will look and see where the flights are going because I'm like, hey, look, you never know, and I'm
Yeah,
not willing
true.
to take those chances. But also, this is one of the things when I take students abroad, we discussions. Like we were in Italy, we were in Milan. This is like 5 years ago when I took them for that trip, and there was a big, huge protest in Milan outside the cathedral. And all of our students, we have like WhatsApp and all this kind of like the group text kind of stuff. And I'm like, and we were there, and all of a sudden it just like appeared. I'm like, hey, students, avoid the cathedral right now because if there's a protest, you never know what the protest is for. You could believe in the protest, it could be great, but you don't know when it's not your country and you don't know what's going on. So sometimes, like I always say, look, try to avoid those kind of things. I mean, if you want to do a protest, that's you. But if you're not sure what's going on, I always say, hey, look, it's best to kind of avoid that. So we'll do that. Because there've been some times. I remember this is a long time ago. This is probably like late '90s. I was in Lima, and I'm like walking down the street in Lima, and all of a sudden there's like, it's like a wave of people come running around the corner, and they're just like running, and everyone's grabbing their stuff and running off the streets. It's like in the movies where like the alien beam comes down, explodes, and everybody's running away. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what the heck's going on? And then like these personnel carriers come around the corner, and I'm like, oh, I'm getting out of here.
Yeah.
I take off, go back to my hotel. I asked the people at the hotel. I was like, yeah, they do that sometimes, just kind of clear out the streets. I'm like, oh, okay. I did not know that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
but
another
that
thing
was
you want to put on there.
and that was a different time in Peru. That was the Shining Path was there. There was a different time
Yeah.
than it is now.
Okay.
So
Cool. Let's talk about some countries that are on your bucket list and some places that you would
yeah.
really like to go. Not places that you've been before necessarily, because I mean you have a variety of different videos to cover a wonderful array of different places that you've been. But what
Oh,
are some
thank you.
things? Yeah. But what are some
You're
places
so
that you?
nice.
Well, you know what, you are too. I mean, we're gonna
Okay,
be
good.
like little polite chipmunks. Oh no, after you.
Fist
Um,
bump. Ding.
so what are like the top three places you would say right now are absolute you really really want to go? If money was of no object, you'd be there tomorrow.
For
If
me,
Yeah.
well, because there's different. Because I can look at it for like well, I know what my wife would say. I know what I would say. For me, Israel,
Hmm.
Egypt, and probably I would either go Ethiopia or I'd want to go to New Zealand. Like
Okay.
those would be mine. My wife, number one for her, well, her top three, well, her top two, it's Bhutan and
Hmm.
Ethiopia, and then Israel. It's like those are the three ones for her.
Shout out, by the way, I just did a video on Bhutan and it's now
Oh,
up.
nice.
Yeah,
Oh, cool.
my nephew went there, and so he had a really interesting experience. And there's a story about wild dogs there as well that he yeah, he got
I'll have
chased.
to check that.
So yeah,
Yeah,
it's really interesting.
yeah. So yeah, and that's and like Bhutan. Then like Antarctica. Like my oldest, he wants to go to Australia. My youngest wants to go to Antarctica.
Mhm.
So these are all things that we're going to do eventually. But because I like to take the kids with us everywhere we go when we can, just because now when I travel by myself, I'm like, man, I wish they were here. And I know sometimes, my kids are getting older. Like you'll notice, there's a lot of family travel bloggers and vloggers, but their kids are really little.
Yeah.
Once your kid, like, if you have one, you'll see them. They'll have two or three kids. It's really cute, easy to take them around. But then the first kid kind of like goes through. By the second kid, they're like, look, I want to be on a soccer team. I want to
Mm.
go to school. I want to do this, and I want to give them a normal life, too. So now, like my oldest, he's going into 8th grade. So like grades really matter. Class really matters. Like I can teach. Well, luckily I can teach him all the stuff. I mean, I can do the algebra and calculus and stuff. Not a big deal.
Yeah.
But I know not every parent can do that, and so we try to like, okay, we got to plan these things out. Like if I'm going to go to India, I don't want to just spend like a 10-day spring break. I want to go for like a couple months. And so finding the time to get the kids school and planning those things out, it becomes much more complicated now
Mm.
than it was before. So now we're kind of looking at it like, I'll look farther out. Like, for some reason I feel like 15 is when you can do Antarctica. I mean, sure, there's some different stuff, but like, I know like seeing the gorillas in Rwanda. We were in Rwanda. Love Rwanda. Get a chance to go. It is awesome. Love Rwanda. But you have to be 15 to do the gorillas in the mist hikes.
Hmm.
You gotta be 15. So the kids couldn't go. I'm like, all right. So put that. Yeah, it's like a note. Hey, when Liam's 15, then we'll go back so they all can experience the gorillas together. But like that's when it's like Antarctica's like a few years down the road, and so we're kind of planning these things out a little bit overall. Though people don't believe, it's like, no, you're not. I'm like, excuse me. It may seem like we're traveling 24/7, but we're not traveling. We're traveling a lot, but not now. But in a normal year, we are. So,
I want to ask you a bonus question here really quick.
ooh, bonus
Given
question.
Yes, given that your kids are so young, is there any country or any type of travel that you've gone on that you've said, you know what, I think we really need to leave the kids at home, or I think not necessarily because of danger, but maybe it's just maybe it's a more adult trip, maybe it's just something
Yeah.
that's a
Well,
little bit more risky or challenging.
the only thing I would think, like Vegas with kids, I'm not a fan. Like some people are like, oh, Vegas does have a lot of stuff for kids, but
Hmm.
the overall experience going down the strip, I don't think it's really right for little kids. Not right, but like I don't think it's best for little kids. There's plenty for them to do, but just how it's set up, and if you're going out at night and stuff, I'm not a huge fan of Vegas for kids.
Yeah.
Other things with kids, like some places, like Switzerland is gorgeous, but I wouldn't take my kids because we actually had probably the most anti-kid experience traveling in Switzerland.
Hmm.
It's like no high chairs. I remember my oldest, he was a huge Picasso fan, or at least he was when he was little, and so he wanted to go to the Rose, it's like the Rose Garden Museum or whatever in Lucerne.
Okay.
And it's just because the owner was a collector that helped Picasso, was a friend, so there's a big collection. And they're like, you want to take that kid in there? And the lady like, yeah, he wants to see Picasso. He's learned about it in school. And my older, he was born like 35.
Hmm.
Okay, like some kids are just more mature. And so he's walking around looking at everything, and the lady's like falling, like not like in the same room, but it's like right there on him. And it
She's
was such a,
she's wanting to make sure that he doesn't touch anything or do anything that
yeah,
would
do
be.
anything. But I'm like,
Yeah.
everything's behind the glass. I mean, it was such a horrible experience. And then I've had friends that live there, and they're like, yeah, it's horrible having kids there because it's not like it's basically set up that kids should stay home. And so that's why I tell people. But I'm thinking, look, if you don't have kids, I mean, some people don't like kids, which is fine. But if you're gonna, I mean, I'd say Switzerland, like, go without your kids because it's gorgeous, it's super expensive.
Yeah.
So why not knock off half the price when you have to buy their food, and do that? So those are the only two kind of things, really.
Yeah, I actually did an interview with someone who went to Switzerland and then right after that to Monte Carlo. And I would have thought Monte Carlo would have been more expensive, but she was like, no, actually,
No.
Switzerland is much more expensive.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, that was an interesting learn.
Yeah, Switzerland and Norway are just, I mean, it's funny. Like, there's a joke. You go skiing in Sweden, the only people that are drinking at the top of the ski slope are the Norwegians because for them, it's still cheaper than in Norway. And I remember coming back from Oslo with my mom, my dad, and we were in Gothenburg. And I remember, like, the beers are $8. What a great deal. I mean, I know if you're like in, like, big city, like, oh, $8, that's a normal price. But when, like, the normal beers are like Germany's like 4,
Yeah.
and like you're like, whoa, it's like double the usual price, and that seems cheap compared to Norway. Like Norway, I'm like, I mean, honestly, we went out, we did not drink beer at night because I'm like, nah,
It's
nope,
just not cost effective.
it's not cost effective. I mean, it's just, I was like, I don't know,
I
it's a
want to
bit too
talk to
much.
you, absolutely, and I want to talk to you more about that too.
Mhm.
Let's go into a couple of other things here, especially culture, because that's a huge product of both my channel and yours as well.
Mhm.
In terms of different religious locations that you've gone to, is there any that have really stuck out to you as being maybe your favorite? And I know it's favorite is really a subjective term, but
Yeah, I think seeing some of the shrines in Japan, especially in Kyoto,
mhm,
was just really really cool. I think the Mezquita in Cordoba in Spain is one of the coolest sights you can see. It was a mosque, and they built a Catholic church inside the mosque, and that's pretty incredible. I've never been to Hagia Sophia, so I can't say anything about that. I know we were talking about the Church of Spilled Blood in
yeah,
St. Petersburg.
love that.
That is pretty cool. What else? Oh, it's funny because sometimes you find like little chapels that are pretty interesting, like some of the bone chapels you'll see in the Czech Republic or in Portugal, which are just like, whoa, that's different. You're like
Yeah,
that. They can be quite the experience. But yeah, I mean, those are some of the things I saw that were really cool. I thought actually was neat. I was in Tunisia years ago, and Tunisia, they were very like, hey, if you want to come to the mosque, just take your shoes off. We'll give you a tour. So I got to go into all these mosques and check it out. And that's where I learned a lot about Islam and stuff. It was it was really cool. It was like I learned. It was like a cool tourist experience, but it was a cool educational experience as well.
mhm.
Because they're like, yeah, I mean, you're from, you might not know. So we, gave us the whole tour and stuff, and that was really really cool experience.
I think from my perspective, and the reason I ask this question is because we get a lot of facets of different religion, and when people think towards religious places, they're automatically thinking to the Vatican and places that are just opulent and very
Yeah.
large. And we've been to the Vatican, and I like the Vatican. Don't get me wrong, but it's some of these places that are off the beaten path that you really get that really interesting experience.
Yeah.
Like when we were in Thailand, we got to see one of the oldest Buddhas in the world, and I thought that was really
That's cool.
spectacular. When we were in Tallinn,
Mhm.
we went to Old Tallinn, Old Town Tallinn, up in the
Yeah.
hillside area, and they had a maybe it was just the environment, but when we went into this um,
The
church.
Russian Orthodox Church up there. Yeah, I
Yeah,
know
and
exactly what you're talking
they were
about.
playing the pipe organ, and you got to see the
Benedictine.
coats of arms inside of the church, and it was
Oh,
just
that one.
yeah, it was just a really wonderful experience, and it was like, wow, this is really breathtaking.
Hmm.
So I want to encourage you, the students that are listening and watching out there, take a moment to consider going to other places. The Duomo in Florence, and
Hmm.
seeing stuff there.
And I think one thing that's interesting is for the students that are out there, if you do travel, you'll be surprised how many religious buildings, because not a lot of people are going to church or
Yeah.
practicing a lot now, and so a lot of them have been converted. So you might go into it, like in Scotland, you might go to a church that's now a pub, or you can go, or like if you're in Prague, you can go and there'll be like musical concerts in the church, which the organ concerts are just unbelievable. I know for me, I used to live in Finland, and the cathedral there, I mean, it looks nice. I mean, but when you go in, it's just like the acoustics and just being in there, that experience of it, and I've been there like for multiple concerts, just like, wow, that's like cool. Even if you don't like that kind of music, you can
Yeah.
appreciate I mean, it sounds funny to say you can appreciate the acoustics, but you really can. It's like, wow, that's really amazing.
But
Like
that's
you can
part
feel
that's
the
part of the
music.
culture, though. I mean,
Yeah.
it's part of the experience. When we were in Helsinki, I remember the Church of the Rock, and that was right
Mm-hmm.
there. And so it's very stark. It's very different than other religious places that I've been to, but it's really, you're thinking this was just all carved out of a single piece of granite. It's spectacular, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and
Um,
that's where you get some of those monasteries up on the hills and stuff. It's just like, it's so cool.
Absolutely. So, what have been some of the favorite art places that you've been to within the world?
So I like the Prado in Madrid a lot. I think that's one that, I mean, people talk about, oh, the Met in New York, which is awesome, and the Louvre, but I mean the Prado's right up there. The Art Institute of Chicago
Hmm.
actually has an incredible collection, um, for kind of a wide range of stuff. Like obviously you got the British Museum. That's actually my favorite museum in London. Some other good ones. There's one in Tokyo we went to. I can't think of the name right now. It's gonna dry. I'll remember once we finish. There's one in
Okay.
Tokyo. It has an incredible collection of imperial art and a collection of like historical stuff. It's wonderful. But I think one of the places I like to go a lot is because my kid, well, a younger one, he's all, he went through the dinosaur phase and the engine phase and stuff like that. And so we'd always go to the national history museums,
Hmm.
and those for me those are ones I can always go to and just kind of like, hey, that's kind of a cool thing. Yeah, I like that. I like
Yeah.
that. So those are ones that are always nice to go to for me.
And don't get me wrong. I mean, here in America, we have the Smithsonian, and out here on the West Coast, we have the Getty, and so
Yeah.
we have a lot of really wonderful locations. Seeing them abroad, however, and what was really eye opening to me is when you're going to some of these places that are so amazingly old that the marble steps are actually warping,
Hmm.
because there have been so many people who have walked on them over the years. It's really quite an interesting experience.
Yeah, and then sometimes when you go and it's actually the building that it's in is actually more of a like sight to see than the actual building or like the collection.
Yeah.
Like if you're in Vienna, they have these two museums back to back or across from each other, the mirrored, and the Natural History Museum there. I mean, it's a cool Natural History Museum, but actually the building it's in is way better. You're like, dude, that's really cool. Like that's really cool. Like that's cool. Oh yeah, that site's nice. Like that exhibit's nice, but that's really cool. So
Yeah. Let's talk about the languages. Now, you yourself actually speak a couple of different languages,
yeah.
but where have been the places that you have found just enriching as far as maybe the best languages that you've heard, or just in terms of conversations?
So I think because any place you can travel, you can get by not speaking the language. I mean, a lot of people will say like, I don't know, I don't speak the language. I'm like, dude, not everyone speaks every language in the world. You'll be okay. You'll be pointing, hungry. Like it goes a long way.
Pictures.
You'll be
There's lots
fine.
of
You'll be
pictures
fine.
everywhere
Plenty of
too.
pictures. You'll be fine. But for me, I think where I got the biggest boost is when I started learning Italian,
Yeah.
because the Italians will communicate with you anyway. But once you speak a little Italian, then it's like, oh, you must meet my grandma. You must meet my cousin. Come to dinner with us. I remember our youngest, he was born in Portugal, and we flew over to Italy, and he was like 6 weeks old. And so like we're walking around, and everywhere we went, the grandmas would come out from the kitchen. They're like, nah, you two are eating. I'm going to hold the baby. And so they would take Liam when he was a baby,
Aw.
and then they'd take Caleb, who was 4 at the time, and they like, he's going to learn how to make pasta, and he's going to watch him. And like in Lucca, Rome, Vicenza, Venice, like it happened over and over and over again. So it was really, and it was because I could speak some Italian, and so they felt more comfortable because even in Italy they probably won't take your baby if they can't talk to you, but if you can talk to you, it's like, hey, can I? Yeah, sure, go ahead. Why not?
Just out of curiosity, does he have dual citizenship? Your youngest?
He can get it if he wants.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
nice. That's very, very cool. Okay, now I want to move into one of my favorite things, and that's talking about diet and food. I love to talk. I'm a foodie. I mean, like when I travel the world, that's one of the biggest things that I
Oh
think
yeah.
brings me together with the culture and the people that are there.
Well, and the
There's
thing is,
so many.
the food really helps you understand the culture better. Like we have Italian food in the U.S., but when you eat
Oh my gosh.
in Italy with Italians, you're like, I get it now. I get why they're so bored. So I get the talking. I understand that. Like the efficiency stuff, like, oh, now I know. Like people complain when they come to the US, like, why is it like they give you the food and they're like, okay, get out. I'm like, oh, it's part of the culture because the service, more people come through, more money they make in the tips. Oh, I understand. So you can learn a lot about the culture just by going out to eat, which is so awesome. But yeah, no, the food, yeah, food's a must for us. And there's some places we'll go just to go have the food.
Hmm.
Like anytime, like, oh, we can stop by France. That's totally fine. We can stop by there. We should throw in a few days. Let's just go across the border.
Yeah. No, I mean, like for me, I don't have a problem describing some things, but food in some cases can be challenging unless you're experiencing it. Point in
Yeah.
case, pizza. People, when they think pizza in the United States, they're thinking Domino's or, whatever, type of
Hmm.
what they call pizza here. And then the next level to that would be, okay, well, people in New York or people in Chicago have a very specific kind of pizza that they like, and it's really good. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. Those are fantastic pizzas. And then there's Italy.
Yeah.
And-
And it's a totally, I mean,
yeah,
yeah, they're all pizza, but it's hard to explain. It's like
it
once you're
is.
there and they'll have like, oh, we have Roma style pizza. Like we have a place here in Champaign. And I mean, it's close. I'm like, yeah, that's nice. It's not there, but it's like, hey, like that's why I never go to Rome. Like, nah, I gotta have a pizza diavola, the little devil
Mhm.
pizza, vegan
Yeah.
pizza with the spicy pepperoni.
Oh yeah.
Always get the mozzarella di bufala, the buffalo mozzarella.
Oh yeah.
Get that on there. I would have been there this year.
We were just in Venice in August of last year, and prior to it being flooded, by the way.
Yeah.
And
Well, I've been there when it's been flooded, so I know exactly what it's like.
oh
So.
man, I don't know if I'd be prepped for that. But again, I know it was a little bit more of a touristy area, but they treated us fantastic. We just had a dinner right on the one of the main canals, and I had a caprese salad, which included the buffalo mozzarella, like you're talking about, and it was just,
Next
dude,
level.
yeah,
Next
seriously.
level.
When you have it that's
As your
made the same
students would
day,
say, next level.
yeah, exactly.
It's,
As the kids are
yep.
telling me these days.
That's right. It's not lit anymore. Lit's not
Yeah,
cool. We got to find the
so
next
last
layer.
year, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's talk about also sports and recreation. Now, when you're traveling abroad, I know I've heard stories of you, when you've interacted with cultures and they've put on sports for you or different types of things while you're drinking a beer. What have there been any unique sports that you've seen that have been like really kind of taken your eye and say, that's really interesting. I never thought about that, or I never really engaged in that.
Well, the first time I had an experience abroad with sport that I had no idea what it was playing ring ball in Australia,
Hmm.
which is kind of like basketball. It's a women's game, at least it was when I was there. They say it's a women's game, but it's like basketball, but it just has the hoop. It doesn't have the backboard, and you don't dribble. You just pass it around.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, well, something different. I've never played that before,
Yeah.
and then what I saw the difference in the cultures, the passion about different stuff. Because like you have we talked about people have passion about sports in the U.S., but imagine everybody in the U.S. only liked one sport. You see that passion with football or your
Oh,
soccer,
soccer,
and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And then in Nicaragua, it was like baseball. It's like it's all about the baseball, man. Like they're like we were driving through, and the guy that drives like, hey, that's one of our baseball stadiums. There's another baseball stadium. I'm like, oh, okay, like that's it's interesting to see like different things that you really get popular, but. I've been to, I don't know, probably 20 Serie B and Serie C, like minor league soccer games in Italy with the
Wow.
Vicenza team,
Hmm.
like to the point that I have a jersey, one of the game day jerseys from one of the players.
Nice.
So it's so like they're like, oh, grande Mark, hey, he's back. So I go into town and they'll be like, hey, I remember you used to went to a bunch of games 10 years ago. I'm like, yeah, I did. Yep.
Wow.
So like I would go on with some of the fan groups to games all throughout Italy. We went to one. I mean, it was like an 11-hour bus ride, and it was foggy, dangerous. We get down there, and the city cops like stop the bus, like, nah, we're not gonna let you go, you troublemakers. So we had to sit outside the stadium
Oh.
for the entire game. Then the people came out, they left, and then we got to leave again and drive back up. So it was
Uh,
quite the experience. It's like, okay, but there was one because I've gone to some that were like they kind of sometimes can be dangerous ones, like where they pee in the class and throw it at you and stuff.
yeah.
And there was one like the cops were checking us as we were getting off the bus, and this guy looks at me, he pats me down. Another guy stops me, pats me down again. He goes, "Oh, you're just fat." Like, thanks, man.
Oh,
Thanks.
wow. No filter.
So filthy.
Thanks.
I just busted up laughing. I was like, So it was pretty funny.
Now, have you seen any like large scale cricket tournaments or anything like that as you
So
travel?
cricket, no, I way back in the day, I dated a girl from England, and they were big cricket fans. We never went to a
Yeah.
match, but we would watch all the cricket matches on TV. So you'd have like the experience, like, oh, we're gonna sit down and watch cricket today, and so we'd watch it on BBC and stuff, or I think it was ITV.
Yeah.
So it would be that, like big events. I've been to some like European qualifiers for soccer for Portugal.
Mm.
And then like so I've been to a bunch of Germany like Bundesliga soccer games. Let's see, where else have I Sweden, I've seen it. I took my students. So if there's ever a game on when I take my students abroad, I always try to take them to a game. So we've gone to a game in Denmark to see like how it's different. They're like,
Yeah.
they don't sell any more, like they hardly sell any food and very little drinks. I'm like, yeah, they don't know about the multiple revenue streams. Like you could be making a lot more money, people, but hey, that's nice.
Yeah. And speaking of traveling at specific times, I want to talk to you also about traveling during the holidays, or
Yeah,
maybe not necessarily the American holidays, but
a
holidays
holiday.
abroad. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Talk to me about some times that you've traveled where it has been on a holiday and what your experience has been like during that.
So, because with work school, so I mean, we've done the Christmas markets in Europe. I don't know, 20 times. I mean, not even joking, like a lot. But excuse me, and they're wonderful. I always recommend people to go do them if you can. It's fantastic. But some of the ones I've done a lot is Carnival. Like I've done Carnival in Brazil, Carnival in Italy, then Fasching is what it's called in Germany. I've done that in like Cologne. I've done Carnival in Venice where that's really big. So I've done that. First time I was in France, we went to the Bastille Day. We were
Mm,
there for the fireworks at under the Eiffel Tower with my brother.
yes.
What else? There's been some other days I didn't know it was a holiday. Then we're walking around. I'm like, where is everybody? It's like it's the hidden holidays. Like actually, one of my favorite holidays is Santos in Lisbon,
Mm.
and it's a big, huge city festival that goes on in June. And it's just like the whole city is done up, and everyone's out drinking and partying, eating sardines and stuff, and
Nice.
it's pretty cool.
One of the memories I have was one of the first universities I worked for. This was like almost 20 years ago. Had recommended that I go on to a cruise in order to visit one of their locations, and this was in Hawaii. And so I'm traveling from
Fair
location to
enough.
location. Yeah, exactly. I'm traveling from location to
Word
location.
says we got to do it. You got to
Yeah,
do it.
exactly. Well, you got to do what you got to do. And so one of the things I did was I had stopped in Maui and jumped
Stopped
over,
in Maui.
stopped in Maui, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to see our location here, and nobody's around. Well, it turns out it's King Kamehameha's birthday, and
Oh,
so
so
the
it's
entire place is shut down for like the entire day. I'm like, great, just the day I needed to stop by. So
yeah. We've had a few of those where it's like, oh, we're only closed. It's like a random, like there's only random days the Vatican museums are closed. It's
yeah.
like, and we've been there one of those days, and I'm like, luckily we weren't going here today, so we'll be
Mhm.
here extra early tomorrow.
Yeah. So let's talk really quick about some of the types of content that you have on your channel. You definitely have a lot of, we talked about the do's and don'ts, which I really like and very much appreciate. We talked about the shocks. I've also seen the loves and hates of some of those
Mhm.
places, as well as what to eat, what to wear. Do you have like a favorite video or a favorite type of video that you enjoy?
I I like the culture shock ones because they're fun, but I think the one that gives the biggest bang for the buck for people to watch are those don'ts videos,
Yeah.
just because it covers so many things. The most difficult one to actually edit are those what to eat ones because you're just sitting there like drooling, like, oh, I want to have this. Like, I have a what to eat in Italy video that I just straight up
Oh,
refuse to do. So I'm
I
like, no,
yeah.
I can't do this right now. I cannot do this right now because I'm like, I want it all. So
Think
those are always fun.
I think good advice to any of the students that are out there, whether they're viewers or whether they're people who are just fans of Italy, just go there and just eat. I don't really think you can do anything wrong with the food that's out there. I have never had anything bad, like
No,
even subpar.
yeah, and I think one thing you should look for if you're gonna go to Italy, a lot of people the prima e secondi piatti, the first plate and second plate. First
Hmm.
plate's the pasta, second plate's the meat. So if you order different stuff, it might come at different times. So if you're with your friends, you all want to eat at the same time. Just say, hey, bring it all at the same time.
Yeah.
Do that. And don't expect the insane huge pasta portions like you do get in the U.S. It's
No.
a much smaller portion, but it's so good.
And don't expect something like Olive Garden. Please don't. It's
Oh
not even.
God, yeah, no, 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 no.
Don't even.
Shh,
Yeah.
shh.
we will not mention their name anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple of burning questions really quick.
All right.
What are some common questions that you get from your viewers that they want to know?
How do you pay for travel? How do you pay to travel so much? Did you win the lottery? No, I did not. We make concerted financial decisions to save money for travel.
Mhm.
Like we don't eat out a lot because I'm like, wait, I could spend $80, $100 taking the family out to an Italian restaurant here, or I can save the $100, go to Italy, and get it local for 50 there.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of like it's easier for me to save. We have a bunch of videos on saving money for travel and how to save money while you travel, because of things you can do to like save enough money that you can add on 2 or 3 days on your trip, just by doing that. So that's the biggest ones. Like we just make the financial decisions to do that, and so that's probably the biggest one.
I think that's fantastic, and I think the viewers would definitely get a lot from that. What are questions that you wish that they would ask?
Um, I think what I wish they would ask more of is kind of like for family ones, like is it like there's questions I think people want to ask, but they're too afraid to ask. Like I haven't done a lot of videos on just like traveling for the first time stuff. I have a couple like what to expect at check-in and what to expect at security and stuff like that. But there's a lot of people that it's just that first thing, like how do I get that ticket? How do I decide where to go? It's that first thing, that first hurdle they don't get over. Like it's like once you get over that first hurdle, then it's a lot easier. I mean, that's one of the things that makes me so happy. I've got some people that were just there. I was just talking to them. They're like, look, they're having their 25th wedding anniversary.
Aw.
They were going to do a cruise to Europe. They've never been, but then they started watching our videos and like, we felt confident enough to do it on our own instead of a cruise. And thank you for giving us that confidence. I'm like, that's awesome. And I'm like, well, what else would you want to know? It's like, well, for us, it was just, we were just scared. We didn't know what we didn't know. And
Mhm.
so sometimes like, hey, it's okay to ask what you don't know. And so like, hey, can you help me out? So that's why like I answer tons of questions every day on all the social media platforms. I mean, we get 30 to 50,000 comments a month on YouTube. So I mean, I can't
Wow.
answer all those because YouTube doesn't give you all of them, and
Yeah,
so there is that. But yeah, I just any question they want to ask is one I wish they would ask.
that's awesome. And being a professor, I think it's one of those things where you really embrace that
Yeah.
that learning curve. Um, do you so global entry or mobile passport? Which one do you have? Do you have one?
I actually don't use either of them. I just have TSA pre-check because I
Okay.
have a family I go through. So there's always limitations what you can take through. I know, like, I think global entry you can take one kid with you or something like that. And so I'm like, you know
Yeah.
what? I'm gonna save the money. The TSA pre-check was totally worth it,
Yeah.
because that we all could go through, so that was fine. But I haven't done it yet. And the mobile passport, again, I mean, I have people like from Australia, like, oh, we'll just take the mobile passport thing. I'm like, you got to make sure the place you're going to go will accept
Except
mobile
the mobile
passport.
passport. Exactly.
It's not like you just like, oh, I don't need this passport anymore. I throw it in the garbage. It's like, hey, look, I mean,
Mm-mm.
it's like anything. It's like guidebooks on your phone. It's great until the battery dies. You're like,
Or until there's like no internet connection where you're going to, and
or
then you have
someone
to.
steals your phone, because
Oh
more
yeah,
people
about
would
that.
rather have your phone than they'd rather have your passport.
Yeah, which
So,
sucks. Ugh, it's
but
terrible. But I
yeah,
mean, that shouldn't deter a person from traveling. There's always going to be a little bit of risk whenever you
yeah.
travel, and
Well,
it's like,
there's risk going out to McDonald's down the street.
yeah,
You
no,
know,
exactly.
that's why there's a car accident. It's never 100% someone else's fault.
Good point. Currency.
Yes.
Do you tend to buy it domestically before you go on a trip or after you arrive?
Okay, this is one thing I talk to people a lot. My advice, on average, the best exchange rate I get is if I use my home local bank debit card
Hmm.
at an ATM in the country I'm going to. I take the money out there, and when you go, the key thing is they'll ask you, do you want to do the conversion? Never, ever, ever take the conversion. It's like, look, now you're guaranteed that 200 euros will be $300. You're like, yeah, but you're offering me a $300, but if I look at the actual
Mm,
rate, it's only 225.
yeah,
And I mean,
exactly.
I've seen 20 to 25% markups, and this isn't just at like the really like shady looking ATMs. This is like at national chain banks. So never take the conversion. Same thing if you're at a store, like, oh, we can convert that to dollars for you. Like, no, in euros, please, in yen, please, thanks. I mean, you want to make sure you're doing that.
Absolutely. Well, Mark, I want to thank you so much for doing this interview with me. As I said,
Thank you, Scott.
I've been a huge fan of yours for a long time. I think you really helped me with a lot of my travels, and I want to be able
Oh,
to
thanks,
share
man.
that with my students as well.
I
So,
appreciate it.
for people to be able to find you on the internet, I
Yeah,
think your YouTube site is probably the best place. Is that
yeah.
correct?
Yeah, youtube.com/Wolters World. You can find us Instagram.com/Wolters World. Twitter.com/WoltersWorld, Pinterest.com/WoltersWorld, WoltersWorld.com, Facebook.com/WoltersWorld. With an L, we're all there.
And please remember, it's Wolters with an S, not an apostrophe S.
Yes.
Just
They'll find it. You'll
find
find us. Just look for a fat guy with a beard and a
Oh,
ponytail. You'll be
okay.
fine.
Well, thank you so much. Again, to my viewers that are out there, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this. If you do have any questions after this, please feel free to reach me at scott@theprofessortravel.com. You can always subscribe to the channel. If you like this and you want to continue to see more content like this, give it a thumbs up. If you want to be alerted to when new videos come out, absolutely click the bell icon. And for those who are podcast subscribers, you can find me on Apple Podcasts. Make sure to find me there as well. If you have any questions, as I said, please feel free to reach out to me. But until the next time, make every day a travel adventure. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye now.